Let's begin our story on a battlefield, where a man with blood all over his body is staring at his left arm, which has detached from his body, and his surroundings are full of lifeless comrades. When he looked at his fallen comrades and thought about how they died, he was filled with anger. Jangmun is Sahyung. Sahyung is a senpai under the same master. His Sei is a kuhai under the same master, and his Sajil is a disciple of Sahyung or Sei. All his comrades are dead. Over 20 different sects, including the 10 great sects and the ultimate military unit composed of the elites, their clash with Chun Ma only resulted in complete annihilation. The perpetrator of all this is only one man. His name is Chun Ma. Chun Ma is the heavenly demon and the leader of the heavenly demon sect. The demon sent him from the skies. Our protagonist, who was full of anger, tried to stand up. He then took out the sword that struck in his chest and got ready to kill Chun Ma. On the other hand, Chun Ma, sitting on top of the dead warriors with blades all over his body, uttered his last words. He acknowledged our protagonist and the Mount Hua sect as the great swordsmanship in the entire world. And he reminds our protagonist to remember that this is not the end and the demons will return to conquer the entire world. And no one can stop the demons. Then our protagonist gives his final blow and beheads Chun Ma. The war is over and our protagonist's inevitable death is waiting. All of the people of the Mount Hua sect are dead, and the powerless children are the only ones left. After killing Chun Ma, who brought chaos and destruction to the world, our protagonist breathed his last breath on top of the headquarters mountain of the heavenly demon sect. He is one of the 3 best swordsmen and the 13th disciple of the great Mount Hua sect. His name is Chung Myung. He has a lot of regrets. He could have saved at least one more life if he had trained even a little harder. He saw a baby and 2 men, warrior kids training swordsmanship, and a teacher scolding him. Plum blossoms are all around Chung Myung as he falls to his death. His Sahyung told him he didn't need to regret his past. The Mount sect would continue no matter what happened. After that, a kid woke up when someone gave him a heavy blow on his head, and the kid suddenly attacked. He tried to stop the attack. But when he noticed that his hand had become shorter, he could not do anything but catch all the blows from the kid. Then he went to the river to clean his wounds. He was never beaten this badly, even in the Mount Hua sect. When he looks at the water and sees his reflection, he wonders if he reincarnates, as mentioned in Buddhism. A boy approached him. He asked the boy 2 questions. The first is whether he is a beggar, but based on his clothes, it is evident that he is a beggar. His second question is if he knows Chun Ma. He found out from the boy that Chun Ma died 100 years ago. Chung Myung gets surprised by what he heard. Then he grabbed the boy in his clothes to confirm if he was telling the truth. When he found out the boy wasn't lying, he couldn't believe he was reincarnated after 100 years. Again, he asked the boy what had happened to the Mount Hua sect. But the boy couldn't answer him because the Mount Hua sect no longer exists at the present time. He learned from the boy that the 10 current sects are Shaolin Temple, the Wudang, Ashen Sect, Kongtong Sect, Qingcheng Sect, the Lotus Order, Southern Island Sect, Kunlun Sect, the Beggars Union, and the Southern Edge Sect. After the boy spoke, Chung Myung could not believe that the Mount Hua sect was not among those mentioned. That's why he grabbed the boy by the clothes again, then shook him and asked again about the Mount Hua sect. It wasn't long before he learned that the Mount Hua sect had fallen, and now it was just a part of Shaanxi province. Chung Myung couldn't believe the sect that was one of the 3 most prominent sects in the world, along with the Wudang and Northern Loyal family, had fallen. Then he let go of the boy and learned his current name was Cho Sam. The name of the boy he was talking to was Ku Chil, and the one who beat him earlier was Ku Pao, but they called him Wang. Then he reminds the boy to remember his name is Chung Myung of the Mount Hua sect. The next time they meet, he will return today's favor. Then he left and returned right away because he did not know the way to Shaanxi province. After that, Chung Myung ran to go to Shaanxi province. In his past life, he didn't ride such a slow thing like a horse, but in his current body, he already gets tired after running for only a few minutes. Chung Myung realized that he could not reach Shaanxi province in his current body. That's why he thought of training himself in martial arts. Then Chung Myung finds a place where he can avoid contact with the physical world. When he found the proper location, he sat down to start his training. Due to the extent of his knowledge in martial arts and techniques that he learned in the Mount Hua sect, he can easily begin learning martial arts again in the correct sequence. He started learning the equilibrium technique. He took a deep breath and then concentrated. Equilibrium is one of the beginner's techniques of the Mount Hua sect. Everyone who enters the sect starts by learning this technique. It cannot significantly increase one's inner energy strength, but it perfectly cleanses one's body. In other words, it's a fundamental technique. Chung Myung is in deep focus and didn't rush his training to ensure he precisely cleanses the energy absorbed from his surroundings. If he gathered the cleansed energy into the elixir field of his body, this elixir field would be the foundation that would open up a whole new world for him. Chung Myung completed his first training successfully, and managed to have a small but firm energy that will roll like a snowball and eventually become an avalanche no one can stop. He tried to stand up but fell because he had consumed all his energy from training. After a while, in a small market town, two boys approached a man and reported that a rookie beggar had intercepted their begging money. Then the man comes with them to teach the rookie a lesson. It turns out the rookie they mention is Chung Myung, whose mouth is full of food. The three approached him, and the man told him that because he was still young, he would let our guy leave unharmed as long as he left behind the food and money he had begged. But of course, our guy didn't agree. He stood up and warmed up to teach the three a lesson. Chung Myung's elixir field isn't perfect yet, but it's more than enough to teach them a lesson. Aside from that, he has adjusted to his new body. The man ordered the two kids to rush forward, but our guy easily dodged the kids' blows. He knocked down the kid with just one blow and then shouted that he was the Plum Blossom Sword Saint of the Great Manhwa Sect. Moments later, the three beggars, full of bruises on their faces and bumps on their heads, apologized to our guy. Our guy asked the trio if they knew the fastest way to Shaanxi province. The man explained that beggars like them knew nothing of such matters. Our hero approached him and said that the next time they meet again, when he asks, he should be able to answer something if he doesn't want to die. Then the three beggars ran away. On the other hand, in Manhwa Sect, while the current leader of the Manhwa Sect stood in front of the window, a man named Unum called him and informed him that a boy wanted to meet him. Then our guy Chung Myung introduced himself to the old man and said he wanted to enter the Manhwa Sect. After the old man heard that our guy wanted to enter the Manhwa Sect, he asked Unum if he had told that they no longer accept outsiders to join the sect. Unum replied to the old man that he had already said it, but Chung Myung was desperate to meet the sect leader. On the other hand, Chung Myung is smiling, but deep inside him, he is actually irritated. A few moments ago, when Chung Myung reached the bottom of Manhwa Sect, he was annoyed because the shortcut taught by the three beggars did not help him. However, he hurried to climb Manhwa. He climbs the mountain as if his life depended on it, so even though he has difficulty climbing, he still manages to reach Manhwa Sect. When he arrived at the front entrance, he was annoyed that the Manhwa Sect signboard his Sahyung always cleaned every morning was missing. When the door opened, Unum came out and informed him that they do not accept outsiders. Still, because it was late and they couldn't let a guest of Manhwa Sect climb back down in the middle of the night, he decided to let him in. Upon entering, Chung Myung noticed the former marble stone floor was gone. When he looked to the left, he noticed that the heavenly golden palace was gone. When they arrived inside the Yuyuan temple, he noticed the golden candlestick that was bestowed upon ancestor Didong Hak by the emperor of the Jin dynasty was gone. The hanging scroll written by hand by the ancestor, the gold plating decorations, and the painting that used to fill the room, all of them are gone. And above all, the plum blossom flower made out of some strange white metal is gone too. Chung Myung discovered it had been sold. He felt so down because of this. When Unum noticed him, he approached him, but before he could get close, our hero begged him that he wanted to see the sect leader and wished to join the Manhwa Sect. Return to the present. Chung Myung anticipated that the Manhwa Sect leader would refuse his entry, so he devised a plan. He will use the name Chung Jin, who was lost during a war, and the scenario will be that Chung Jin fell off a cliff. A passing lumberjack discovered him and treated his wounds. Although Chung Jin couldn't move right away due to his deep wounds, Chung Jin taught the lumberjack martial arts techniques from the Manhwa Sect and treated him as a disciple to thank him. And our guy is descended from that lumberjack. The best part of the scenario is that he can choose his own position within the sect. If the lumberjack is his grandfather, he will technically hold the same position as the sect leader. Our guy is ecstatic just thinking about this scenario. Regrettably, the sect leader approved him without hesitation. As a result, Chung Myung was surprised and disappointed by the sect leader's decision. The old man instructed Unum to provide a place for Chung Myung to stay and prepare for the entrance ceremony. Moments later, after wearing the uniform, our guy felt confused about the current sect. The clothes he wore were only for a third-rank disciple, and the room he was staying in now was only for guests. Those who newly join the sect immediately form a bonding contract with their teacher and stay in the same room. He wonders if there are also other people in the other room, so he tries to peek into a room. Then another disciple appeared behind him and accused him of being a thief. Because of the noise made by Zhou Gull, the other young disciples came out. Yunjong, who they call Great Sayang, approached them. Great Sayang means he has the most seniority among those children's disciples. After a while, one of the teachers, Ungum, came over, as they call him Great Sasuk. Great Sasuk is the Sei, junior of their master. He told Chung Myung to rest first and remember to participate in the training for tomorrow. Then the young disciples left with their teacher to train. Before leaving, Gul told our guy he would teach him a lesson after the training. At the same time, our guy was smiling and thinking about what to do with the young disciples. A few hours later, Gul ordered Chung Myung to remove his clothes and dance. But when he got irritated with our guy, he said he would start by beating him. But our guy answered him with his fist, and the other young disciples' eyes widened at what they witnessed. At the same time, Gul's body was stuck up on the ceiling, and the other young disciple was shaking in fear. A few moments later, while Jong was massaging our guy, the other young disciples with bumps on their heads were kneeling before our guy. Later, our guy called Gul to ask for information about the Golden Palace. Our guy found out, according to their teacher, the Plum Blossom Sword Saint took a significant role in defeating Chun Ma. But after that, the remaining groups of the Heavenly Demon Sect became furious and pushed their way into the Jingyuan region. For some reason, they forced their way up to Mount Hua and set the entire mountain on fire. And because of the severe damage they took back then, they still haven't recovered the prowess they used to have. Because of what he learned, our guy couldn't help but blame himself. After that, our guy recalled the time he was talking to his Sayom, Jang Mun. The two agreed to hide the Tei Flummox sword technique because this technique is weak. To prevent the children from taking an interest in Tei Flummox sword technique, Chung Myung advised removing the technique from the library, to which Jang Mun agreed. Jang Mun advised him to take some disciples, but after knowing the method he would use to teach his future disciples was not good, Jang Mun never again mentioned forming some disciples for Chung Myung. At the training ground, while Chung Myung was watching Jong teaching the other young disciples, he was confused as to what technique he was doing. When he found out from Ungum that it was an equilibrium sword technique, Chung Myung was irritated because what the young disciple learned was not correct. When he was in the line of those doing the training, he discovered the sequence of the techniques being taught. From the equilibrium sword technique to the Seven Sages sword technique. After that, they graduate from the Plum Blossom House and learn the Lesser King sword technique. And when they learn everything, they are able to learn the sacred technique of the Mount Hua sect, the Tei Flummox technique. When Chung Myung learned about this, he was stunned and surprised because he knew that he and Jang Mun had already discarded the technique. In the evening, our guy called Gul and ordered him to gather the young disciples in front of the White Plum Blossom boarding house at precisely 5 a.m. the next morning. The current situation of the Mount Hua sect is that they have neither wealth, technique, nor talent. As such, it wouldn't be surprising for the sect to collapse overnight. Out of the three, the one thing that Chung Myung can help with is his talent, so he decided to teach those kids to improve their bodies and knowledge in learning martial arts. 5 a.m. in front of the Plum Blossom boarding house. The young disciples were annoyed because of the gathering. When our guy arrived, a disciple pointed out that they were not being respected. Our guy politely asked for forgiveness and brought those annoyed with him inside the boarding house to talk. After a while, the commotion inside the boarding house was heard outside. A few seconds later, the frightened children ran out. After a bit, the children lined up neatly while our guy gave them his instructions. From now on, they would train at the same time every day and keep the noise down so the teacher wouldn't wake up. A few hours later, when Ungum woke up, he was surprised because none of the young disciples greeted him. He thought that maybe because the newcomer Chung Myung was given a strange welcome, that's why the kids were still asleep. As he walked, he was thinking of the punishment that would be given to the young disciples. But he was very shocked to see the young disciples lying on the ground and looking very tired. He tried to ask the children what had happened, but none of them dared to answer him. And when he saw Chung Myung carrying 2 large stones on his back while exercising, he approached him. He found out that the young disciple had agreed to exercise every day. Since it's their first day, they become hyped in training, which causes them to have excessive fatigue. But the young disciples are signaling to their teacher that they don't want what they are doing. Ungum noticed this and warned our guy that the White Plum Blossom boarding house has its own regulations and doesn't sacrifice sleep for training. But he didn't expect Chung Myung to answer that he would stop what he was doing. To avoid looking like a fool in front of Chung Myung, he thinks of a way to scold him. But before he could think any further, our guy told him to give him a month to train his seniors to speed up their improvement. When Ungum found out that Chung Myung had no bad intentions, he allowed him to train the young disciples. A few days later, while Chung Myung meditated on his elixir field, he thought he had discovered much about the Mount Hua sect. First is the White Plum Blossom boarding house. This place was like a private dormitory made in a hurry due to the need for more people to form disciple-master contracts with. The second is the sect leader and the unpedigree. Putting aside their personality, they're weak. Their strength can't even be compared to the Mount Hua sect of 100 years ago, and also their young disciples are terribly weak. On top of that, most of the third-class disciples entered the sect to make social connections. But this doesn't matter for Chung Myung. He is determined to make the Mount Hua sect the strongest of all sects. While the young disciples were eating in the canteen, they complained because of their tiredness and body aches. A disciple told Gul to talk to Chung Myung, but Gul got annoyed and said he was not a servant. and if they had a problem with Chung Myung, they should be the ones who would talk to him. Then he invited Jong to go outside, and when they were out, he told him what he thought about Mount Hua sect. At first, he believed that the Mount Hua sect was already done for, but it all changed when Chung Myung arrived. Even though they were forced to do the training, he realized that he never pushed himself to this extent when it came to training. He admires Chung Myung for being dedicated to training and never showing tiredness. Gul wanted to try his best to become a master of a caliber capable of leading the entire world. Jong gave him a bright smile and said they had the same thoughts. But unknown to them, Chung Myung is just listening and happy with what he heard from the two young disciples. After a while, Chung Myung heard a noise from outside. Some people came with torches and forced open the front gate. They were looking for the sect leader to charge the debt. Our guy was stunned and could not believe what he had heard. After a while, the people led by pavilion owner Kong arrived in front of the sect leader's house. They told the sect leader to come out, and when the sect leader came out, Kong explained to him that they had given him too much time to pay off the Mount Hua sect's debts. Kong gave the sect leader 7 days to pay the debts, and if he didn't pay within 7 days, they would confiscate the Mount Hua sect temple. Kong was interrupted when they noticed Chung Myung. After that, Chung Myung found out from the two young disciples that the people earlier were the merchants from the Hua Prefecture village located under Mount Hua, and that Kong was the owner of the largest pavilion in Hua, the T Hua Pavilion. Chung Myung gets angry because he knows that the Mount Hua sect originally owned the T Hua Pavilion, and he feels strange that something is wrong. Chung Myung ordered Gul to take the clothes that he mentioned earlier. When Gul handed the clothes to him, he immediately put them on and left to go to Hua Prefecture village. Inside a pagoda tower, merchants happily gather. A merchant mentioned that the Mount Hua sect's debt is 100,000 yang. While eating, the other merchants praise Kong. Still, they don't know that deep inside Kong, he belittles the Mount Hua sect. He even compares it to the meat of a duck that he can rip apart with minimal force from chopsticks. His thoughts were interrupted when a merchant asked him what his plan was after they confiscated the temple. Kong explained that the value of the temple was beyond their imagination, and he could guarantee its value. He also added that they could use the enemies of the Mount Hua sect to their advantage. He knew that many sects would jump and spend a large sum of money to buy and erase the existence of the Mount Hua sect. He assures the merchants that they will get their money's worth. After the gathering, an inebriated merchant walks home and thinks about what he would do with the money he would get once the Mount Hua sect had paid. He stopped when Chung Myung appeared in front of him. Chung Myung informed him that he was not interested in money, he just wanted him to answer his question, and he would let him go unharmed. But the merchant was not interested, and his guards appeared from nowhere. The merchant told the head of his guards to catch Chung Myung and ensure he could still speak to hear what he wanted to say, then turned away. While standing back, he was listening to the fight. He thought his guards had finished Chung Myung, so he turned to scold the guards, but he was shocked to see what he did not expect. All his guards were lying on the ground while Chung Myung grabbed the remaining one by the collar. He told the merchant to come closer and said that if he had just listened earlier, he could have left unharmed. Still, since the merchant tried to fight him, he will make him taste the beating and ensure he can still speak. Wait a minute, isn't that what the merchant said to his guards earlier? By the way, let's get back to our story. A few moments later, after Chung Myung beat the merchant, he discovered that the Mount Hua sect's debt had reached 100,000 yangs. The merchant explained that due to the high interest rate, the Mount Hua sect's debt increased. If you loan money with a high interest rate, the interest keeps growing as long as they don't pay it off. Chung Myung gave him another punch to the head for being proud of what he said. Chung Myung also discovered that this merchant's family had owned the Hua fabric shop for generations. But Chung Myung knows that the Mount Hua sect is the real owner of the Hua fabric shop and other big businesses in Hua Prefecture. He thinks that some people took the opportunity to take over the businesses while the Mount Hua sect was on the verge of collapsing. While he kept hitting the merchant, one of the guards stood up and demanded to reveal the identity of our guy before killing him. But our guy just mocked him. So the guard moved forward with his sword, and our guy grabbed a sword from the ground and blocked the guard's attack. Our guy knows that his enemy is stronger than him, but his advantage is too big when it comes to experience. So he pushed away his opponent using his technique and then positioned for the finishing blow using the Plum Blossom Sword technique. When the enemy was knocked down, he recalled that the merchant was still there and wondered if the merchant had discovered the technique he did. The merchant was amazed at the technique he saw and sensed the pure Kai from our guy and thought that Chung Myung was from the Southern Edge sect. Our guy agreed with him so that his technique would not be revealed. Then the merchant answered all our guy's questions. A few hours later, inside the boarding house of Mount Hua sect, Jong and Gul are waiting for the arrival of Chung Myung. Gul is worried for Chung Myung because he is still not coming back. Jong calms him down and assures him that Chung Myung will be able to return. Moments later, Chung Myung returned, and he informed them that he was treated very well and he gathered some information. Chung Myung thought that the Plum Blossom technique is not existing anymore in the current era, so it's not the symbol of the Mount Hua sect anymore. He also found out that the merchant's name earlier was Jongsun Yu, who had lived his entire life in the Hua prefecture and could not think of the Mount Hua sect after seeing the sword technique of Chung Myung. After thinking, he told Gul to gather the young disciples for training, and he explained that they would not miss a single training whether it was raining, snowing, or windy. Our guy also said he would not participate in today's training session. Then the two left, and Chung Myung lay down to think about how to save the Mount Hua sect from debt. Our guy believed that the books that would prove the properties of the Mount Hua sect may have been burned by the demon sect. If he ends the merchant's life, Mount Hua sect's name will be put to shame, until he recalls his Sayoung Jang, who always kept the account book whenever he visited. Our guy thought the account's books were just hidden in a secret storage, which is hidden underground near the sect leader's residence. He wasted no more time and left to find the secret storage to save the Mount Hua sect. Somewhere in Mount Hua sect, Chung Myung continued to search for the secret storage using his energy. He becomes tired and rests for a while. Then he continued to search using his energy to locate the secret storage. If his energy met a large empty space, it meant it would be the storage room. He used his energy again and again to find the secret storage. He felt like giving up when he got tired again and lay down. Still, he was determined to help the Mount Hua sect, so he got up again to find the secret storage location using his energy. It wasn't long before he located the secret storage. He took his pickaxe and started digging. When the bricks appeared, he stopped digging. Then he removed a brick and saw a hallway under it. He also noticed the sect leader walking towards the entrance of the secret storage. When the old man reached the storage door, he stopped and bowed sadly. Chung Myung noticed this and understood the old man's feelings. He knows that being a sect leader is no joke, especially facing the current situation of the Mount Hua sect. A leader cannot show his weakness because he is the only one the disciples can lean on. He needs to endure all the pain and sadness alone. Moments later, when the sect leader left, Chung Myung came down to try to open the door. He used his energy to open it, but it just bounced. He found out that the door is made of everlasting metal that has 1 foot thick. Even the strongest martial artist in the world can't cut this door, and now he understands why the sect leader never tried to open the door. He tried to find a way to open the door. When he noticed the blade marks on the door, he also identified the sword techniques used here. The 24 movement Plum Blossom Sword Technique, the Bamboo Leaf Sword Technique, the Plum Blossom Sword Technique, and the Equilibrium Sword Technique. When our guy realizes he has a clue to open the door, he foresees the moves he will use to open it, starting with the Equilibrium Sword Technique and Bamboo Leaf Sword Technique, followed by the 24 movement Plum Blossom Sword Technique. Finally, he will bring out the Plum Blossom Sword Dance. His plan is perfect, but the problem is that he can't do it with his current body and power. But there is another way. He can perform the techniques if he uses his innate True Kai. But there are consequences. He will become weak and take a month or more to recover. The innate True Kai is something that every person has had since birth. This is the energy that maintains life, in other words, a life of force. Because our guy had no choice, he used his innate True Kai and had to succeed in opening the door with just one try. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to do it again. While performing the techniques, he could feel the weight of his body, and he was vomiting blood. But our guy did not give up and managed to perform the techniques correctly. After performing the technique, our guy knelt down and noticed that the door opened a little. He was thrilled with what he saw, but suddenly he spit blood. After a while, he stood up, excited to see what his Sayoung Jangmun had hidden. When he opened the door, he noticed the storage was smaller than he thought, with only 3 bookshelves. When he took the blue book and opened it, he was surprised by what he saw. Their problem with the merchants can now be solved because the book he is holding is the accounts book that will verify the assets of the Mount Hua sect. Then he took the other important books and put them inside his clothes. Then he took a green book from the second shelf and found out that this book contained the martial arts techniques that had been abandoned by the Mount Hua sect but not thrown away by his Sayoung Yeongmun. Our guy promised himself and his Sayoung that he would strengthen the Mount Hua sect even more than before. Then he noticed a scroll on the 3rd shelf. When he opened it, he read the last will of the former sect leader. If anyone is reading this right now, it must mean that the next generation sect leader has been decided. I humbly leave my words in this letter. The role of the Mount Hua sect leader is not to simply lead the Mount Hua sect. If the reader is already a sect leader, they surely must know of this already, but those who lead the Mount Hua sect are none other than its disciples, the growing children. A sect leader's job is simply to provide them with protection and motivation, ensure they are able to pursue their dreams. As such, please abandon any impatience from the responsibility of having to lead the Mount Hua sect as its sect leader. The Mount Hua sect is just the Mount Hua sect. It is full of will and spirit, which no one is able to control nor lead. Whether it is on the rise or in decline, the Mount Hua sect will always be itself. In order to ensure that the will of the Mount Hua sect is passed on to the future generations and that it remains unchanged, Please foster the future generations and continue our legacy. As your predecessor and your ancestor, I leave behind a great responsibility to you, the 21st sect leader of the Great Manhwa Sect, Chung Myung. After reading the will of the former sect leader, Chung Myung decided to leave. But before leaving, he noticed something strange in the position of the storage room. His Saeung Mun kept 2 lamps in his room directly on his right and left to maintain the symmetry of his room. And our guy also noticed that only a single scroll was placed on the 3rd shelf. That's why he lifted the shelves, and then he saw a shining light coming from under the shelves he lifted. Then he went under and was surprised by what he saw. Our guy discovered what his Saeung had hidden. The piles of golden bars, the precious swords that were organized in perfect order, and many unknown gems and secret techniques books. Chung Myung can't help but laugh maniacally at what he is witnessing. The next morning, while the sect leader was sadly thinking about the remaining days the merchant gave him, someone suddenly called him. When the sect leader came out, the anxious Gum told him that he needed to see something. When the sect leader noticed that Gum was desperate, he went with him to the place that Gum had mentioned. While on the way, the sect leader saw the young disciples lying on the ground. He found out from Gum that the kids were training. Upon arriving at the place, the sect leader immediately noticed the change in Chung Myung's face. Still, when Chung Myung pointed to the location of the treasures of the Manhwa sect, the old man was surprised by the shiny light he saw. Chung Myung informed him that he had just discovered the treasure by accident. Then he pretended to be tired from training, so the old man permitted him to rest. In disbelief, the old man approached the treasures and took the green book. After seeing the contents, the old man fainted. A few hours later, the sect leader awoke while reciting the 7 Plum Blossom Sword Techniques records. Then he ordered Gum to send the finance and economy agency leader, Hyun-young. Sometimes later, Hyun-young informed the sect leader that the account books were real and secured the verification documents under the treasure. These are the documents from the government. With this, they can not only prove the validity of the contents of the books, but they can also immediately bring back the businesses of the T-Hua Pavilion and the Hua Prefecture that were originally under the possession of the Manhwa sect. And the treasures that were with these documents easily exceeded 100,000 yongs. After hearing the good news, the sect leader felt relief. He was very grateful that he accepted Chung Myung, who brought prosperity to the Manhwa sect. Then the sect leader ordered to invite everyone who was related to the Hua Prefecture business account books. A few days later, when the merchants reached the front gate, they all felt conflicted about bringing down the Manhwa sect, which has been the protector of the Hua Prefecture for hundreds of years. After a while, Gung greeted them and led them to the sect leader's residence. The merchants humbly greeted the sect leader, and the sect leader thanked them for answering his call and climbing up the mountain. He tried to invite them for tea, but Kong declined and wanted to talk straight to business without any formalities. The sect leader told them his reason, that he tried to contact many different people but could not find anyone willing to lend him money. As such, he can't be able to repay his debt. But Kong informed him that they already gave him more than enough time to pay the debt. The sect leader explained that even though he won't be able to repay the entire debt of the Manhwa sect, he can repay them partially. Therefore, if anyone is personally willing to let him delay the repayment date, he pleaded with them to do the Manhwa sect a favor and show some mercy. The atmosphere changes, and Chung Myung notices it from behind. He is curious if the sect leader is acting in order to drive the merchants into hell or just trying to treat them with geniality. He knows that the sect leader must maintain his composure, and he is confused about whether the sect leader has what it takes to be a proper sect leader. Back to the negotiation, Kong clarified that he could no longer delay the time limit. But the sect leader didn't let him finish his word and told them that he was not addressing his request solely to the pavilion owner Kong, but to every one of them. Kong wanted to know if the sect leader could repay those who refused to comply with the sect leader's request. The sect leader informed him that even though he could not prepare the entire 100,000 yongs, he could prepare a portion of it and again asked for some mercy. Then, Merchant Yun intervened and asked the sect leader that if they delayed the repayment date, it meant the sect leader would repay them in the future, and continued that it wouldn't be strange for the Manhwa sect to collapse any day soon, and he is sure that everyone knows about it. So trusting the sect leader's words and delaying the payment comes with the risk of potentially not receiving their payments. And for what reason would anyone comply with the sect leader's offer? The sect leader sighed and answered his question for the name of the Manhwa sect and its history. Merchant Yun got stunned by his answer, and Kong laughed out loud and told the sect leader that his response was unreasonable. Then, the sect leader asked them if the name and history of the Manhwa sect had no value to them. The sect may have weakened over the years. Still, it has always been with the Hua Prefecture the entire time. The sect has passed on its energy and spirit over the generation and continuously shared it throughout the whole prefecture. Then he asked them to reflect on what the Manhwa sect means to them. The merchant leader intervened and made a suggestion. Those willing to delay the repayment date personally will stand in the other line, and those who are not willing will remain standing where they are. However, everyone is responsible for their own actions. Then he ordered the other merchants to select where they would like to stand. When he notices that no one is trying to move, he informs the sect leader that no one will delay the payment. Still, before he finished his words, he noticed that someone had moved forward to the other line. Shop owner Yu moved to another line and explained that he knew he was doing something stupid and clarified that Kong was not from the Hua Prefecture. Since Kong is not from Hua Prefecture, he mustn't realize the value of Mount Hua Sect. But for those who have lived their entire life in the Mount Hua Sect, since they were kids, they grow up hearing stories about the Mount Hua Sect and always hear the phrase, "They must also enter the Mount Hua Sect and become the world's greatest martial arts master." Even after realizing they lack the talent to enter the Mount Hua Sect, they continue hearing the story about how the Mount Hua Sect has protected this world and the Shaanxi province. Those stories get nailed into the heads of people who live their entire lives in Hua Prefecture, and as such, the Mount Hua Sect is the pride of Shaanxi province and Hua Prefecture. You continue that if Kong leaves after receiving the money, it may be over for him because there are many places where he can spend his money. Still, for you, he can't go anywhere to spend his money because he has lived his entire life in the Hua Prefecture. Kong assured him that he would regret his decision. However, you clarified that he already has enough for a living. If you were to make the Mount Hua Sect collapse today, he would regret his decision until the moment of his last breath, and he doesn't want to live such a life. Then Kong said to do as he pleases, and it's not like anything will change if a single person decides not to take the money. But some other merchants also moved to another line, and Kong got surprised by their actions. The sect leader felt satisfied with the fact that there are still those who hold a meaningful connection to the Mount Hua Sect. Then he ordered Gum to bring the account books. When Gum put the box of account books on the floor, the pavilion leader Kong got angry and in disbelief when he learned that it's the business account books of Hua Sect Prefecture. Then, the sect leader angrily informed the pavilion leader that the Mount Hua Sect had shown benevolence towards him and his ancestors for many generations. But the pavilion leader betrayed the Mount Hua Sect instead of repaying debts. Kong is sweating and feels cornered. The sect leader continued that according to the account books, the Mount Hua Sect will take over his businesses and the wealth he has accumulated through them until now, down to the last coin. To prove what he said, he summoned the head of the finance and economy agency, Hyan Young. When Hyan Young arrived, he explained that they had already sent half of the account books to the Hua Prefectural office 2 days ago to get appraised. Because of what he discovered, Kong was very annoyed and felt that the sect leader had tricked him. The sect leader told the pavilion leader to head back immediately. Everything will be over once he arrives in the Hua Prefecture. If the sect leader follows the rules, he will confiscate everything the pavilion leader owns. Still, he considered his hard work, so he allowed the pavilion leader to take a cartload of his wealth. Kong was very dismayed and promised himself that he would never forget this incident. The sect leader informed the other merchants who did not abandon their connection with the Mount Hua Sect that they would be allowed to continue running their businesses under the ownership of the Mount Hua Sect. Then he invited them to go inside to discuss how things should be run to benefit both parties. Meanwhile, Chung Myung is furious that the sect leader let the pavilion leader take a cartload of their wealth. Sometimes later, while Kong and other merchants were pulling their cart of wealth, they stopped to blame each other. Kong said that the account books held by the Mount Hua Sect were fake and forged, and he planned to go to Loyang City to ask for help regarding what happened. Their conversation stopped when our guy interjected. Kong noticed that our guy was like an ordinary weak old man. So he warned him to leave and not try to steal their wealth if he didn't want to die meaninglessly. But our guy ignored his threat and explained that he was not trying to steal their wealth. Instead, he was trying to retrieve it from them. Because of our guy's answer, Kong found out that our guy was from the Mount Hua Sect. Suddenly, his guards came out of nowhere and directly attacked our guy. Still, they were just unlucky because our guy quickly knocked them down using his sword technique. Kong was sweaty and couldn't believe that someone with a high level of martial arts was still left in Mount Hua's sect. And he wondered why someone like him didn't step in during the crisis of the Mount Hua Sect. Kong becomes serious and releases his energy to finish our guy. He makes his move and jumps forward to our guy, but our guy is just calmly standing with his covered sword. When Kong's attack landed, a massive explosion could be seen in the distance. Unfortunately for him, he didn't manage to hit our guy. Even if he didn't look down on his opponent or let his guard down, he can't believe that our guy just dodged his attack, and aside from that, our guy looks bored. He is so irritated by our guy's expression that he makes his move again to finish our guy. He quickly moves toward our guy and launches a massive blow, but our guy simply blocks it with his covered sword. The pavilion leader feels so much pain in his arm because his attack gets blocked before it has the chance to be extended, so the inner energy gathered up and it is reflexing. Our guy advises him to stop trying because his finger would be one to break first if he does that kind of attack again. The pavilion leader ignored his advice and suddenly launched his revolving kick technique, but our guy quickly dodged it and disappeared before him. When he noticed that our guy was already behind his back, he tried to make a blow using his arm, but again our guy just blocked it with his covered sword. The pavilion felt so much pain in his arm, causing him to kneel and wonder that our guy was not fast nor strong. But he couldn't land a single hit on him. Even though our guy is slow, he moves with the perfect timing, in the ideal direction, and at the perfect distance, and doesn't waste any moves. The pavilion leader feels like he is fighting the monster. Because our guy didn't want to waste time and couldn't get any information from the pavilion leader, he moved forward to beat him. Kong thought that our guy would hit him in his left knee, so he was sure he could block the attack. Unfortunately, our guy hit him in the shoulder. Kong thinks the second attack is aimed at his head, but again his guess is wrong. Our guy hit him in the neck, causing him to choke out. He can see our guy's attacks but can't manage to block them. While coughing, our guy gave him multiple attacks on his body, and when he noticed our guy's eyes, he felt the eyes of a killer who slaughtered countless people. While Kong was kneeling in pain, our guy removed the cover of his sword and tried to finish the pavilion leader, but Kong didn't want to die, so he used his Tei Godly Palm technique to block the attack. A massive solid strange light can be seen in the distance. Kong is still alive, and our guy didn't really mean to kill him. His plan was a success and get information that this pavilion leader was from the Southern Edge sect. Knowing the technique he used, Chung Myung tried to ask him some questions, but he couldn't get any answer. Even if the technique Kong used earlier is from the Southern Edge sect, he still denies it. The Mount Hua sect and the Southern Edge sect had many similarities and held solid internal connections. They both used swords as their primary weapon of martial arts, and if the two great sects with many similarities are next to each other, one or the other is bound to perish. However, because Kong shows his Tei Godly Palm technique to Chung Myung, he will also show one of his sword techniques and remind Kong to deliver the message to the person who sent him to the Mount Hua sect. Then he used his Plum Blossom Sword technique with the fast hand move without hitting the pavilion leader. Then, on his last move, a pink light appeared in his sword, and when he swayed his sword, the above became lighter and full of plum blossom leaves that falling to the pavilion leader head. Kong has identified the technique that it is the 24 movement Plum Blossom Sword technique, the rainfall of Plum Blossom. But because of more injuries he received earlier, he thinks he imagines things, and then he falls to the ground. On the other hand, our guy coughed out blood because he still didn't recover his inner strength. Then Chung Myung called the other merchants hiding from the trees to come closer. Because he couldn't bring all the cart, he ordered one of them to get some cash in Zhenjiang in exchange for their wealth. No one dares to betray him because they all know what will happen to them. After getting the money, he quickly runs and jumps back to the Mount Hua sect. Sometimes later, the young disciple rest in a river to clean themselves and wash their clothes. As Gul smiles and stares at his comrade's disciple, he feels a lot of change. He can now see an actual group of martial art practitioner. Then Zhang approaches him and asks what's making him smile. He shared his thoughts and learned that Zhang was thinking the same. Subsequently, they all head back to the Mount Hua sect. While on their way, Gul thanks Chung Myung in his mind for bringing changes to the Mount Hua sect. Although it's only a tiny breeze now, no one knows whether it will remain the same or turn into a massive storm that will shake up the entire Mount Hua sect. But whatever the outcome, these changes will undoubtedly impact the sect's future. When they arrive at the front gate, Gul notices some people carrying woods and other stuff. When they went inside, Gul approached Gum. He learned from Gum that those people were all laborers who would repair their temple. Then Gum ordered them to help the laborers. In the evening, the young disciples are unbelieving when they see some meat on the sect's dining table. Their mouth is drooling, and they all cheerfully celebrate because it's the first time they will eat some meat in the Mount Hua sect. After dining, Gul and Zhang are on their way to the boarding house. They are still in disbelief at the sudden changes in the Mount Hua sect. Except for the meat, they also have 2 new uniforms and the sudden construction work to repair the temple. It is also the first time they see laugh so brightly. Because of the rapid changes in the Mount Hua sect that Chung Myung brought, they both agreed to prepare themselves with the utmost determination because if they didn't, they might be swept away in the storm of change that our guy creates. Speaking of Chung Myung, Gul noticed he hadn't seen Chung Myung since this morning. Zhang informed him that the sect leader wanted to see Chung Myung, so he was probably in the sect leader's residence. At the sect leader's residence, the sect leader wanted to reward our guy for his achievements. The sect leader offers him some of the wealth he handed to them or some advanced martial techniques. But our guy is not interested in the old man's offer. Instead, our guy wants to give them the other books full of martial art techniques but can't find a way to hand them naturally. He then voiced out what reward he wanted. He asked the old man to allow him to go to the Hua prefecture whenever he wanted to. But the old man disagrees with his request because it violates the Mount Hua sect regulations. Then Chung Myung brings out his health condition. So, he asks the sect leader to give him some pills of life to heal. Before the sect leader gave his answer, he grabbed his cup of water and took a sip, and then when he put it down, he declared that disciple Chung Myung no longer required permission to go outside the Mount Hua sect's temple. However, he must not go outside the Huam prefecture. Then he pushed out our guy. Seriously, old man, what's with the sudden change of mind? Oh, I get it. You don't have any pills of life. Anyway, let's get back to the story. At the same time, when the old man closes the door, he asks the two teachers what they think about Chung Myung. Unum explained his thought about our guy. He felt that Chung Myung could understand the way of Tao, and he sensed the word of wisdom from how Chung Myung speaks. Aside from that, when he talks to Chung Myung, he doesn't feel childishness of Chung Myung. He can also sense the spirit of Taoist in him. Then the sect leader turned the question to Hyan Sang. Even though Hyan Sang doesn't have the eyes to evaluate people, he still explained his thoughts about our guy. He thinks that Chung Myung is mature enough compared to other children, and how he talks and acts makes Hyan Sang feel that our guy is an old man. Then the sect leader reminded them to not overmind the issue about Chung Myung and explained that their existence with the sect is to nurture people, not use others for their own benefit. If they find a great talent, they need to support their growth, and if they run into problems, they need to guide them to the solution. The two teachers bow respectfully as a sign that they agree with the sect leader's words. The sect leader learns from Unum that they are currently having trouble gathering more wood for the construction because of the mountain's steepness. Although they are chopping down nearby trees to get as much as possible, they still need a couple more days to dry and trim the felled trees. Then the sect leader asks for their understanding of his excellent intention to rebuild the Mount Hua sect. And he explained that when people establish new self-resolutions and determinations, they must organize their surroundings and correct their behaviors. And this is no different in a sect. This method is the most effective in communicating the new resolutions to the disciples. Unum agreed with the sect leader. At the same time, the sect leader ordered Hyan Sang to finish interpreting the new techniques they had acquired as soon as possible and reminded him not to make any mistakes when doing so. The faith of the Mount Hua sect depends on how they teach the techniques to the disciples. Hyan Sang answered the sect leader with gratitude that he would not make any mistakes. But deep inside him, he is confused if he will tell the sect leader about the techniques book. For some reason, it looks strangely new, considering it's been at least 100 years. Because he noticed that there were even ink marks, as if someone was in a rush writing the books. He thought that maybe someone was putting up a scheme, but he doubted it. So he felt that perhaps someone is helping them and keeping his identity secret. But unbeknown to him, Chung Myung is the one who rewrites the book before they receive it. Somewhere in the Mount Hua sect, Chung Myung is exasperated because the sect leader didn't give him some pills of life. He also knows that the sect leader lost the recipe for the pill of life. Unfortunately, the effect of the innate true Kai he used before was more severe than he expected. His body isn't healing as quickly as he thought. At this rate, his complete recovery might take half a year. It's fatal for someone young like him to lose half a year of training. A child's body continually undergoes growth and change, and because of this, an ideal period exists for one to build up inner strength fundamentals. And once a child misses the ideal period, it will never come back. Chung Myung is desperate to find a way for him to recover quickly. There are two ways to recover his pure innate Kai. Either he consumes a pill of life or receives help from some Kai transfer techniques. However, there is no way for him to find someone who can transfer their Kai to him. But back in his old days, pills of life basically rolled around all over the sect's grounds. He even consumed the Plum Blossom pill as a hangover relief, which was very effective. Thinking of all those memories, Chung Myung really wants to drink right now. Suddenly, he remembers the hangover relief and where he hid those pills. He wasted no time and ran to the mountain where he hid those pills. Upon arriving at the ruggedly disconnected cliff, the cliff known to be the most dangerous and steep, even among the 5 great mountains. The place where he hid the pills is somewhere in the middle of this steep cliff. It is a secret place that only Chung Myung knows, and in the middle of this cliff, there is a small cave that can only be found by climbing up the cliff. This cliff was off limits for disciples to use as a training ground because of its danger. But thanks to that, our guy was able to find the best place to hide from his Sahyung. In his past life, he could have gotten up in his hideout with only 2 jumps, but there is no way he can climb up with his current body. However, our guy is desperate to go to his hideout and get the pills, so he gets a rope roll and plans to climb down. His only problem is it's 10 times more dangerous than climbing up. Since he had no other choice, he still proceeded to climb down. Upon his climbing down, when his left foot stepped on one of the stones, he slipped and fell. Luckily, our guy was saved by the rope. When the rope reached its end, he bounced, then he swung his body and put some energy in his hand, and when the rope swayed him back to the cliff, he used his Kai suction technique to stick his hand to the cliff. Unfortunately, because his current body is weak, his left arm slipped from the cliff. Luckily, he still manages to stick his right arm. Then he saw the entrance to his hideout, he released his Kai, got some momentum, swung his rope, and when the timing was perfect, he tried to jump towards his hideout. Unfortunately, the rope reached its limit and split into 2, so our guy fell again. However, our guy seems to have had a lot of luck today. He managed to stick his right arm to the cliff using his Kai suction technique. Unfortunately, he didn't last long, and he fell again. Oh my, Chung Myung, are you really going to fall to the bottom or not? Don't lose your energy and give up if you will die again. So our viewers can easily guess that it's another reincarnation scene. Don't mind what I say, and let's get back to our story. Luckily, he fell to the front ground of his hideout, but wait, he bounced to the edge. Since he had a lot of luck, the rope saved him again. The rope got stuck to the cliff, and our guy was left hanging near his hideout. Then our guy used his remaining strength and managed to climb the front of his hideout. When he enters the cave, he removes his bed cover and notices a nightlight crystal, then praises himself. After that, he opened his treasure box and picked up the box of blossom pills. He blew the dust and opened the box. As soon as he opened the box, a rich plum blossom fragrance diffused out as if fully bloomed plum trees filled the place. He was very gleeful after seeing the plum blossom pill, and his mouth was drooling. Then he took a pill and put it in his mouth. The pill quickly melted before he got a chance to chew it, and the elegant scent spread throughout his entire body. As he is in a lotus position, he focuses on consuming the pill and ensuring that the Kai from the snow blossom pill doesn't escape his body. But he can't use the pill to recover his innate true Kai at its current state since it's impure. Although snow blossom pills are the pride of the Manhwa sect, they have way too many impurities for him to store inside his elixir field. To purify the pill, our guy has no choice but to throw away all the impurified Kai stored inside the pill. As he felt the Kai inside his body, he noticed only some small portion of pure Ki left. When he was sure that he had finished filtering out the impurities of Kai, he stored the remaining pure Kai inside his elixir field, going to the deepest part of it. And when the pure Kai reaches the deepest part of his elixir field, a massive explosion is released from his body, and the blue light impact can be seen outside the cave. At the same time, inside the cave, our guy was in deep concentration while floating in a lotus position, surrounded by blue energy. Seconds later, sweat came out from his body, and his eyes filled with blue energy. The blue energy burst out from his mouth and eyes. After that, our guy with a blank eye still floated in a lotus position, and his energy surrounded the cave. He moves his right arm, clutches his fist, and closes his eyes. When he opens his eyes, his looks become much fresher, and he notices that his fractures and scars heal instantly. Also, his bone is sturdier than before. He perceives that this young body is very compatible with the Kai from the pills, which makes its effects greater than he expected. On top of that, the remaining impurities in his body started leaking out all over it. He feels like his meridians are expanding. Then he notices that his heart is beating so fast, and suddenly he feels the pain. The reflexing Kai from the lower elixir field has broken through the middle elixir field. He feels a massive ocean wave in his chest and can't control it. His inner strength will become intractable if it breaks through the upper elixir field. So he clenches his hand and grabs his chest to stop the Kai from flowing. After that, his body threw away. Then he recalled the words of his Chung Myung. Martial artists try to oppress and control the flow, but those who follow the path of Tao leave it be. After remembering what Chung Myung said, he became unconscious and found himself inside his body at the upper of his elixir field. He noticed the cracked wall at the entrance of his upper elixir field and wondered how damaged his body was. Then he walked near to the cracked wall and touched it. As he felt the cracked wall, he remembered the advice of his Chung Myung to let the Kai flow to his entire body. Then he slowly destroyed the wall entrance to his upper elixir field. When the wall entrance broke, the Kai flowed to his upper elixir field. As the Kai entered his upper elixir field, he realized that after 100 years, he finally understood what his Chung Myung meant. Then we can see outside his body that his 3 elixir fields, from the lower elixir field to the middle and upper elixir fields, become connected. When the sun rose, our guy woke up and suddenly fell from floating. When he stood up, he looked at his hand and realized that the meridians throughout his body had been unblocked. He can feel the difference in his strength, and can't believe that his young body can withhold it. He could have lost his life or been paralyzed with the slightest mistake. But thanks to his Chung Myung, he overcomes his worst situation. Now our guy recovered his innate Kai, expanded his meridian, and increased his inner strength. In other words, his body becomes stronger. While walking out of the cave, he started to understand his Chung teachings, which he only regarded as nagging during his past life. In our guy's past life, he is a swordsman, but not a Taoist. At the same time, the Manhwa sect is a sect of swordsmen and a Taoist sect. This is the identity of the Manhwa sect. But our guy can't exactly be called a Taoist. However, our guy is determined to revive the Manhwa sect and will do everything to achieve this. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. Well guys, if you like this video and you want a second part, comment below with the word walking. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. But most important, leave a comment. Until the next video.